You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach and matchmaker. I love connecting people. It's interesting, that term matchmaker, I don't really love it. And I was brainstorming with friends and clients recently, being like, what's another word? Because not to put down any particular industry in any way. When I first discovered the field of matchmaking and matchmakers back in 2014, as I started this journey into focusing on loving relationships, human connection, and dating, I was conflicted when I met lots of the matchmakers in New York City. Every industry has charlatans. Every single one you can go into, people joke about accountants are all charlatans, or politicians are charlatans. Well, every industry has charlatans. And there's some absolutely amazing matchmakers too. But for me personally, I don't necessarily fully connect with that being what we're doing. What I love is more like midwifing relationships, not only intuitively introducing you to people. And I personally don't even want the pressure of having to go out and find you the one. I am more interested in the growth experience that intimacy has to offer. And all of us will have a unique intimacy journey this lifetime. And I can't promise somebody within 6 months that I'm going to go find that right person. But what I do is I move from my intuition as I work with clients, whether that's through We Deepen's Love Club, or even it's always through We Deepen's Love Club, but definitely different levels of membership tiers is how I get involved. And as you're learning more about yourself through the erotic blueprints, Aboutly, and some of the other offerings and teachers and systems that we utilize to support your relational journey, I distill all of that information. I had Charles Eisenstein once on this on the Deepen with Christina podcast. I think he's around episode 50-ish, maybe 50, 60-ish. And he said in response to a question about tools, like what tools are needed to activate you more into your heart. And his answer has continued to resonate with me, where he says, it's not about tools, it's about information. As you're out in the world and you're having experiences and you're learning, whether that's through a transformational workshop, plant medicines, are just living your life. You are taking in information. You're just distilling that information in your head and you're bringing it down into the heart. It gets to drop further into the heart and then moves into the gut. And then you're able to make instinctual decisions in the moment because you have access. That information has just been distilled down to you. So working with private clients in this way, it's when I'm out in the world and I'm meeting new people, I am instinctually, my intuition is being activated as I meet new people on your behalf. So I like to say that I make intuitive introductions, but in simplest terms and for the general public and for you to understand it, yes, it's easier to say matchmaker, but I'm looking for a new term. We've entered 2024. If you're listening to this podcast as it's released, welcome. We've arrived 2024. I feel like it's an initiation. Do you feel that way? Anyone else feel that way? You're listening. Do you feel that way? We've been initiated into this, the next level, the 24th level. I celebrated with a 24 karat gold party. That was the theme of the party here in Austin. And yeah, feeling as though all of us at that party dressed in gold, about 100 people, we were all, initiated. So it's January 2024. And interesting, I mentioned this in the last podcast episode, that the first Sunday after New Year's, typically that time period between 8 or 9. So if you're listening to this just as this released, it happened last night. And that hour between 8 and 9 is historically the most popular time that people are online dating than any other time of the entire year. It's the New Year's resolution. We want love. Like, we yearn for love. It's natural. This is a natural thing that we desire to feel a sense of oneness with inside of ourselves. And it's typically activated through that connection with another person. And there's no other feeling like falling in love. And it's amazing and vulnerable to desire that and to admit that you desire that. And I feel this collective, especially because, 2024, it's actually a really, 10 years past TED Talks became popular in 2024. That's when I started paying attention. Online dating, Tinder became popular in 2024. In 2014, we're now in 2024. And so if you were aware of that and you have been part of the journey to now arrive here 10 years later, it's like all of that work, all of those studies are now initiating you into this next level. So I'm excited. I'm excited to share the next new year with you. I'm going through lots of expansion and lots of growth. We deepen where I'm seeking an operational manager. We have more business than we can handle. It's beautiful, more business opportunities. And that's because the relationship industry, it's been primed and people are ready to receive it. We're done. We're done with toxic, unhealthy relationships. The time is now to enter into healthy dynamics, and people are yearning for it, and they're ready. Both men and women are ready for this. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it. It helps me continue to host it. Go check out that calendar at wedeepen.com. You will see the upcoming social and transformational experiences. I have an interview with a new assistant on Friday. It's a second one. I'm in the process of interviewing multiple people, ready to crank it up and crank up We Deepen in 2024. Most of you might not know this, but typically, or what you have been seeing, I've been working sort of as a one-stop shop, like solo in a solo journey. Although I have many advisors and team and guides and community all around me, a lot of it has been my life force energy. And I'm looking for now, with all I've created, I'm looking forward to bringing team in to be able to bring you more experiences, more offerings, more of the teachers, facilitators, mentors who have supported me on my relational journey, who I've seen are well qualified to provide you with their medicine and magic to support you on your relational journey. And that's what I do through our small group at the Love Club. Rolling registration will begin in 2024. So you will have the ability to join the Love Club. We're at capacity right now, but you will have the ability to join that Love Club this year. I'm so excited to welcome to the podcast, Deepen with Christina, Iván. Iván, say your last name because you say it so beautifully, and I'm not going to say it as
Chocrón.
Chocrón.
Yeah, pretty good. Chocrón.
Okay, great. Perfect. I'm so excited for us to be having this conversation, this dialogue, and sharing this with those who are listening. And for those listening, what I want you to know about this podcast, if this is your first time listening, is that I am not interviewing people. I'm leading a conversation and guiding a conversation, and inviting you to join in the dialogue with your ear, and also giving you access to the people that have supported me in my journey, and you can always I like through me you can reach them, or I might give you details of how you can directly reach them as well. So Iván and I met physically. I've heard Iván's name around LA for probably years before we had ever actually made physical meeting. And it happened because there was an Ayahuasca-Iboga retreat happening in Austin, Texas, that a dear friend, Nicole, was a part of. She mentioned, invited me. I wanted to be part of Iván, your significant other, Emily. Her and I have developed a friendship. She also had mentioned these ceremonies to me. I have done about 20 Aya ceremonies prior to the ceremony with you, all with the same facilitator. But I never done Iboga. And I had this curiosity around it. I remember about 5 years ago, a woman had told me that she could not get over an ex-boyfriend for 5 years. Like she was trying everything for years and years and years to overcome heartbreak. And she couldn't get this man out of her brain. And finally she did Iboga, and that was what worked. And so she was raving about it. And I knew there was some power in the medicine I wanted to experience. When the opportunity showed up, I signed up, and yeah, it was and now it's 8 months later that ceremony happened, which was April. If you want to hear directly of how I felt after that ceremony, episode 80 is with Nicole, who I sat next to during the ceremony. That episode is called Ayahuasca-Iboga. And we unpack it like real time, right when we got after. And now there's going to be a little unpacking of this episode 8 months later, because that's the journey of the medicine. It's not instant. You don't get instant gratification from going into a ceremony. It's your brain is still like, what happened? I'm trying to understand that. So I've been unpacking it, and Iván and I planted the seed that this podcast would happen, back in April, around the time that I sat ceremony. And it took a little bit of time to get here. So we finally arrived, and I'm getting to share this dialogue and this conversation, and you and your magic and your genius with everybody who is listening. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Christina, for having me. Yes, as you said, it's been a long time coming. I was waiting to finally be able to allow myself to put myself out in the world through podcasts and interviews and stuff like that. So I thank you and thank myself for the patience, because we've been talking about it for so long. And I kept telling you, I think it's going to happen next month. And it ended up happening much, much later. But I'm glad that we are finally here. And very excited to see where this conversation unfolds.
Me too. And what I want to share with others as well, because I think this is interesting, is, all in divine timing is what you say. And sometimes you feel like you are feeling like, oh, I should schedule this or should schedule this. So maybe we even scheduled once and then it got canceled. And me on the other end is like, oh, because what we spoke about when we, when we made for me to do the ceremony at the time, I was still like, I was it's interesting the word, the financial health. I don't feel like that's the right thing that was happening, but I was, my access to money, like the physical aspect of money, felt limited at the time. And rather than me saying, I can't do that, you can't afford that, I asked to, if I presented an offer for the ceremony and asked if you would take this offer. And then I asked to pay half of it then, and I told you I'd pay the other half later. And I, thank goodness, in this, one of the things I want to cover today is the field of expansion. But since then, my money story has shifted. I now have access to more. I've generated my business. We Deepen, the Love Club, has generated revenue. And I went and started paying back debts. And you were one of the debts I paid back. And in that experience, my brain went, do I really have to pay this back? Like, does he even remember this? And and then, so I danced with my integrity for a moment, but I always knew, like, underneath it all, like I was gonna come through on it, but I definitely danced with it for a moment. Do I really need to? And I got to send that money just maybe 2 weeks ago. And then this conversation is following it. So it's all in perfect divine timing. Thank you for your patience. I have a question. And where I think to start is, you said, now you're allowed to share yourself in these bigger ways on social platforms. Like, you're just now arriving onto Instagram or YouTube, where some might perceive, because you haven't been there yet, that it may be too late. But this word you use, this word allowing, what is that?
I guess I'm using the word allowing as a form of self-allowance. So I am allowing myself now to do this. Partially is because, as a facilitator of ceremony, you don't promote yourself online. It's not something that you want for many reasons. But one of them also is that you don't want people who you don't know coming to a ceremony. You only want people that other people have vouched for, because a ceremony will bring a lot of things up, and you want to keep everybody safe. And if people who aren't ready for it, or people who are not somebody else's trusted person, come, and then something shows up for them that it is hard or beyond hard, or beyond challenging to manage, where it becomes dangerous, that's a disservice to everybody, to myself, to that person, to everybody else, right? So this is a long version of saying that is not something that you promote. And I wasn't ever intending, and I continue to not intend to promote ceremonies online. But there was a moment in which I felt that for the 10 years that I've been holding ceremonies, that I gathered so much information and knowledge and wisdom around how to make the world a better place, if you will. That's a very maybe broad way of saying it, somewhat cliche and very non-specific. So I can go a little bit deeper in there. What I mean with make the world a better place is allow people to have access to real and meaningful healing. So to have them understand themselves better, to help them process trauma, to help them become a better version of themselves, to, which all of those things create beautiful consequences. Like they become more compassionate towards others, towards themselves. They release trapped emotions like anger and rage and hopelessness and shame. And all of those things create a beautiful ripple effect on the people that they are in contact with. Somebody that's dropped into a place like that has a bigger chance of giving a smile to the cashier in the supermarket, whereas maybe without it, it would have been like, hi, and then just keep looking at their phone or something like that, right? And So what I'm saying is that these 10 years of ceremonies not only have helped those people become that, but also have helped me understand how to get people to that place without a ceremony, without consuming plants, without psychedelics, which basically means it was like going to the best psychology university, right? Because you explore it within yourself and working with, in my case, over 10,000 people. I got to see every possible example of trauma, of how people deal with trauma. When do they face it? When do they avoid it? When do they numb it? And so I would say I came out of this university now with a lot of knowledge that I really, really want to share. And it's not even want to share. I want to share it, but that's not the driving force. The driving force is more of it's coming out of me. It's this thing that I am holding that I feel like I am hoarding it, like I am keeping it for myself, and it is almost selfish. It's like this thing that's inside. Maybe that's the best way to put it. It's like this thing that's inside me wants to come out rather than me wanting it. And this thing that's inside me is telling me, everybody, as many people as you can, should better, excuse my sometimes broken English, but as this thing that's inside me wants as many people as possible to listen to it or to hear it, because I realize that I can give a ceremony to 20 to 30 people, and those people are going to benefit a lot, but that's it. And that does not create, of course, in the long run, the butterfly effect, etc. Like in 20 generations, that would have created a massive impact. But it's not what I want. What I want is that impact today, yesterday, right? I want to see the world live in a place of being more healed. Today, I want to leave a better world to our children than the one that we inherited. And so I realized 25 people at a time is not enough. It's good, but it's not enough. What I wanted was for millions and millions of people to start doing healing work. And for millions to do it, you can't depend on medicine, because you can only serve a few dozen at a time. So to respond to your question, to your original question about allowing, this thing that's inside me wants to come out so badly that I finally allowed it. I'm finally like, all right, like this, I can't stop you anymore. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to put my face on YouTube and my voice in podcasts like this one and others. I'm going to expose myself. I'm going to be out there advocating for what I truly believe in, which is that the world needs to heal. That's what we all want, and that it is absolutely possible with the right tools. I hold the knowledge of those tools, and I want to put them out there.
Mm. We're just starting this conversation, and I am so excited because there's so many angles to unpack. As you're speaking, I wrote some notes down. Mm-hmm. Starting first, because if so, allow. I want to still, this word that you used. I also see it. There was a discipline, a self-disciplined in that experience of, and of a waiting for the right time, or maybe when divine time shows up. How does that word discipline register for you within your experience as a leader in, I'll call it the awakening or a conscious movement?
It's interesting you use that word, because discipline has been a humongous part of my journey. In order to put this out there, I knew that the bar is very high. If you go to YouTube, for example, people who are who are successful on the platform are really, really good. They have really good cameras and good editors, and everything is done professionally and they think everything through really well. And a lot of them, they didn't start that way, but they are there now. So therefore they have a bigger budget and a team. And what I realized is that if I want people to listen to, I know that the content of what I put out is good, but that is not enough in today's world. The packaging needs to be proper, the marketing, all of that needs to happen in the right way. And so I realized my competition, not necessarily within my own niche, but is big. And if you want to succeed, then you have to be really good at it. And I want to succeed less because of myself and more because I really want for what I have to offer to be heard. And so it required a lot of discipline in so many ways. It required patience, and that I think patience is a form of discipline. Patience to wait until everything was ready. That was one of the ways. And it required discipline on learning so many things that I had to learn throughout 2023, from which equipment to buy, how to use it, how to use the lighting, how to properly edit, all of the editing softwares, and from Canva to Slack to how to make a website. It was like, and I did have an amazing team behind me that I could not have done this without, and still also know how to write YouTube videos, how to not ramble, and say things that don't matter, how to go to the point. It's been a whole year of waking up from 6 a.m. and going to bed at night, binging on how to do what I want to do properly and get to it and write and record and edit. And I think the reason why discipline plays a big part of this is because for this whole year, I've been in a cave, if you will, working on this silently without telling anybody except maybe my closest people. And it's like working, but not seeing any results, right? It was just putting pieces in place. The social media, I never had social media. And I'm going to tell you a funny story in a second about Instagram. But it was like setting up Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and this and that. It was just a lot of things that needed to be put in place first and then release. And throughout that time, I had so many moments of anguish. I would say that's a proper word for it, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm just doing all of this and no one knows about it. I'm in this cave, just working like a hermit, and I don't see any result, any feedback. Nobody has seen anything. What if I release everything and then it ends up being crap, right? Like, what if I am delusional? And I think that people need to hear these things, and then people listen to them, and it's like, yeah, here's another spiritual guy, like the other 20 million on the other platforms. I knew in my heart that wasn't the case, but it did require a lot of moments where I just needed to close my eyes for a second when these thoughts would show up, and take a deep breath and then trust in myself and in what I'm doing and keep going. And for a very long time, I could not see the end of it. I did not know when I was going to finally release. So discipline played a humongous part on making this happen, because without it, I would have definitely quit way before it was ready, because I just wanted to put it out professionally or not put it out at all. I didn't want to do anything that was halfway there. And really quickly, that funny Instagram story is that it's not an Instagram story. It's a story about Instagram, better said. Is that one of my closest friends had to teach me how to use it. And I was lost. I felt like, when our grandparents or great grandparents is like trying to show an iPhone to your great grandparent, and it's like they don't even know how to turn it on. I really felt when I was 5 or 6 and somebody was teaching me how to use Microsoft Word, that's exactly how I felt. But about Instagram, it was so ridiculous. And I couldn't, like, she was teaching me things and I couldn't listen to her because I started cracking up, laughing so hard. And she's like, what are you laughing about? And like, about how old I feel, where I just don't even know she's like, this is an Instagram story. I don't even know what that meant. Like, for anybody listening to this, I know it's funny because people send you links all the time, and I literally never opened it. I was so resistant to it for some reason. So yeah, I had to start from the basics too.
I think that's part of the discipline, because and there's a paradoxical thing that I'm noticing on one side. So a friend of mine shared with me that her sister-in-law had told their 14-year-old son that he was interested in playing sports for the first time, and the mother had told the boy, it's too late. Like, it's too late for you to start playing sports. You're already 14. You can't start this late. And my heart dropped, because I'm like, whoa, why would we tell a child that it's too late? You missed your time to play soccer or to, play baseball. So, and that, I think, with social media, for the people who have been resistant for it, or some of the new tools, sometimes we do feel that sense of like, I missed my time. And then second, other side of that experience. And I love how you said, I've been doing this work for 10 years. And I started this podcast in 2014 is when TED Talks became popular. It's when around that time is when I did my first medicine ceremony. That's when I started on my personal path of doing the work in love and dating. And now 10 years later, I've accumulated all this knowledge and this information. And I am finally feeling like I have a particular body of work that I'm actually able to step more into being an authority on a subject. And so it's all, back to the word divine timing too, is that for you, it was like you wouldn't have the knowledge and the information that is burning inside of you to be shared if you were on social media back in that time period, if you're using your time that way, and if you didn't have the experience. So there's this collective initiation happening, and it's so exciting because it's accumulating. So anybody who's listening to this, because I know there are a lot of coaches and facilitators, and if you're listening, you're probably a growth junkie, and you've probably been studying transformational or doing your own work in whatever your zone of genius is for an extended period of time. And now we have arrived here, and to not get trapped in this idea of it's too late, or and to know that your journey that you went through to arrive to this moment, to get to this place of having this information to share, was important. And congratulations that you've had that.
Thank you so much. Every time I hear something like that, a part of me takes a deep breath and also lets it go. I can't believe it finally happened. So thank you so much. I'm so glad we're doing this. It's a way of showing me that things are finally moving.
Things are finally moving. So what have you learned from this? Like, what are some of the top, if you were say the most important things that you've learned from hosting ceremonies for a decade and working with thousands of people in this way?
Beautiful question. I really learned a lot of things. As you probably know, many people who have done a ceremony, one single ceremony can teach you so many things, right? And if you think about 10 years of them, hundreds, what are the top things that you can learn out of probably thousands of lessons? And it's funny that you asked me this because I recently recorded a video for my YouTube channel exactly about this. It's called My Top 10 Lessons After 500 Ceremonies. It's not out yet, but it should be out in the next, maybe in the next month. But I can give you a few of those here. The very first thing that I think is important to mention is that true healing is possible. That's one thing that I am advocating for. And the reason why this is important is because, honestly, we as a society don't know that. Individually, we might know that you can actually heal from a physical or from a psychological issue. But as a society, we don't. And the fact that and I'll tell you in a second why, but the fact that as a society, we don't know that, it means that because we are part of that collective consciousness, some of that trickles into us as individuals. Now, what do I mean that we don't know that real healing is possible? Is that if we would know that, we would, as a society, seek much more for real, meaningful healing than for numbing. However, we numb much more than what we seek for healing. We live in a society that, a pill for the headache, a pill for the depression, a pill for lack of sleep, whatever it is that we do tends to be addressing symptoms or numbing pain, one or the other. Alcohol when we are, when we want to escape our problems, or weed when we are unsatisfied with life and bored, or relationships, since you're into relationships so much, we can use relationships as a form of numbing as well. And so we are constantly seeking to numb pain or to address symptoms. But what we are not seeking as a whole is to truly address the root cause of any of those things, which is funny because if we address the cause, then the symptoms are gone. You don't even have to try to address those symptoms. So, that's why I advocate a lot for this principle that real healing is real and it is possible. And it's something that I learned and embodied. And so now that I know it, for sure, it's like a thing that it is part of who I am now, this knowledge. I want to convey that to people. Like whatever it is that you're going through, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, heartbreak, lack of sleep, insomnia, right? Anything that you're dealing with can be healed for real. And the second thing that you were asking me about, the top things, and the second thing is, what is the root cause of that? So first thing is that real healing is possible. And second, that the root cause of most of our physical and psychological diseases is based on trapped and unprocessed emotions. So with the first one, I want you to know you can do real healing. And with the second one, in a way, I'm letting you know where to look for the real healing. And that is in the emotions that you have felt throughout your life, especially, but not only throughout your childhood, that you did not manage to process. If you ask, why are there emotions that I have not processed? The answer is because in order to process emotions, you need to have emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. And some of the emotions that we have felt throughout our childhood were too intense and too difficult and too new and too big for us to even understand it. Like if you're a child and you experience really intense sadness for the first time, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, this is sadness and it's intense and I am feeling it and I can't process it. The only thing that you would feel, it would be like a contraction maybe in your chest or in your stomach, or you would feel like all of a sudden you have no energy and that you want to throw yourself to the floor. But you wouldn't know what's really happening. All you would know is that this experience is overtaking you and you are now in a state that you dislike. And that's it. So the sadness, since you cannot name it or process it, goes somewhere in your body and gets stuck and unprocessed to eventually, at some point, when you have the emotional maturity and intelligence and you are ready, that is also important, because readiness is also the environment that you're in. Maybe you are now with somebody who's holding you properly or who's listening to you or who makes you feel safe. Then that sadness can finally come out. It's almost like you take it out of the vault so that you can process it now that you're ready. And as you process that sadness or any other emotion that has been stuck, something in you will heal, whatever that sadness was causing. Maybe that was the source of your depression or the source of your insomnia or the source of your anxiety, because there is that sadness might point out to a belief that your mom didn't love you because she grounded you. And that's when you felt sad, right? And you're like, oh, my mom doesn't love me. That makes me feel sad. And now you can finally release that. And you might not live depressed anymore without an unconscious belief that your mom doesn't love you. Obviously, I'm kind of making this example very, very fast and very not very specific, but it's just for the sake of understanding how emotions work and how most of our wounding and our issues are based on stuck and unprocessed emotions. So there's two. I can keep going if you want, but if you want, we can also change the topic.
There. These are great. So what's interesting of the trapped and unprocessed emotions, I would like to dive a little bit deeper in that on the relational realm. I'm going to talk gender, man and woman in this moment.
Let's do it.
And we are a generation that got access to we've invested in the self-help, growth, healing information, and we've studied other wisdom keepers, and evolution is happening at the same time as these wisdom keepers have existed. We're learning new stuff, and we're, coming up as like still coming up, I'd say, so rising as these new wisdom keepers, but we're not the elders. And so one person who's coming to mind who I've studied her work, and there's, I imagine, other examples of this to be looked at, but Dr. Pat Allen. Are you familiar with who Dr. Pat Allen is?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Dr. Pat Allen, she is probably maybe in her early 90s now at this point, if not late 80s. She is a psychologist. She wrote several books. Some of her most well-known work is on love and relationships. She wrote a book titled "Getting to I Do." It was a book about how to get to marriage. It was generally written for women, but also applied. Some men would read this book, and she hosted in Culver City, Los Angeles. The first Monday monthly, she would host this gathering. About 70 people would attend, and she would do this hot seat coaching. And people would come up, they'd write their names on the board, And then she'd call them one right up and they would express what they were navigating relationally. And she would hot seat coach them with a very standard way of how things work. And that one of her main ways of presenting her work was that men are the thinkers and women are the feelers. So when you're in relationship and a woman is talking to a man, you ask him how he thinks. What do you think about that, honey? What do you think about this? You don't ask a man how he feels. Men ask women how they feel. Women desire to be cherished and men desire to be respected. And I think there was some great wisdom in her work. And I also feel limited by it. Because as you just said, we're evolving, and it's been realized that there's intelligence in a male's emotional body and his feelings as well. And being a woman, there is lots of knowledge and wisdom in our thinking. Now, maybe this can go into someone's listening might think to themselves, well, that's masculine and feminine energy. And it's not, it doesn't have to be attached to a gender. I get it. However, when I'm working with women, and for the most part, if I ask them, do you desire to be the feminine energy or the masculine energy? They will typically always say they want to be the feminine energy and they're looking for a masculine. And then the masculine presents in these other ways. And so the men that then I work with privately are generally always struggling to maintain this role and to not express their feelings. But they have feelings. They're telling me their feelings, but they don't want to tell the woman their feelings and the woman's then being taught not to ask for their feelings. And so they're in this conundrum of presenting in this way to be the masculine man that this woman is wanting. And she is also then designed to present herself as this feminine embodied woman who isn't shamed for being in her masculine. So at the end of her workday, she goes home and takes off her masculine energy to then go out in the world and date. And it's like bringing these it's almost like these different separate masks and not integrating the whole thing. And I've seen her coming into what you're speaking about is coming into this evolution of acceptance of that. We're all of that. We're all the thinkers. We're all the feelers. We're all this. I even would love to, sometimes I just want to trash and throw away the terms feminine and masculine because I'm so over it because I see how it's so limited at times. And it's interesting because if like books never die. Once somebody puts out a body of work, it never dies. So there's an interesting thought experiment. How do we keep evolving as a society when somebody might pick up the old book and not the new book? And I'm like, wait, we've evolved past that thinking and there's something new, but that book is still on the bookshelves. People are still, one of last night on the Love Club, Alora Nana, who's an intimacy innovator. She's 75. She is I would call her as part of our generation. And she mentioned, these books like Calling in the One and are so like this idea is limiting us, getting to I do. Even the title of the book, Getting to I do. Why I read it and I found something inside of it. It supported my own evolution to get to this way of thinking. But we now have the ability to fast track people even more. It's like those groups of people, 25 people at a time who sat those ceremonies with you were the ones who were able to transmute a lot of stuff that now we can massively spread the information without having to have them go to all the medicine ceremonies or without having to have everybody read these old school books. We're coming into this new light. What of that I said resonates with you?
A lot of it, actually. A lot of things were sparking in my mind as you were speaking. I think one comment I had is that it's not just that they are aspects of the feminine and the masculine, which could be true. Like sometimes people get confused about this because like, well, I'm a man and I have all these aspects. That doesn't mean they're feminine. It's like, well, they're aspects of the feminine that are also in you because you have both, right? But what I wanted to say was, it's not that thinking and feeling are just aspects of masculine and feminine, and we have both, but also that it's more. The way I see it is like we are not a one-piece person. We are made out of many, 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 many parts. And it is more like the parts of ourselves that are more skewed, if you want, into one of the aspects, whether it is the feminine or the masculine, is seeking for completion in another person, in which that specific part is on the opposite side. So feeling is more of a feminine trait, and thinking is more of a masculine trait. And that doesn't mean that if you're a man, you are going to be a thinker, or if you're a woman, you're going to be a feeler, because you in that specific area could be more on the other side, and which will give you a more masculine or feminine trait in comparison to other people of the same gender. Another thing that was showing up is that our parents' generation, and especially our grandparents' generation, was more about women should be feminine and men should be masculine. And so I believe that our generation is, in a way, breaking with that way of seeing the world. So these books that you were talking about were written, again, individually. People could have been obviously in different places, but as a society, I believe that our generation is starting to break with those things, and that all of those teachings were, and those ways of thinking were part of that older generation. And the books written then, they were also they were coming from a place and meeting themselves in that place. So, for example, that book that you were talking about, Getting Ready for I Do, or something like that.
Getting to I Do.
What was it? Getting to I Do. Okay. It was probably a stepping stone that was needed back then. Like, probably people back then read it and it's like, this is exactly what I needed to read, because maybe back then, I mean, I haven't read it, but maybe back then it was breaking with some old programming from the generation that came before them. And we're going to write things now that are like, yeah, we're evolving. This is old and it's totally groundbreaking. And it sounds true and it feels true as well. And then maybe the generation that comes after us, most likely, and I hope that the generation that comes after us, will be like, oh, that's old. What Iván wrote, what Christina wrote, yeah, that was okay for where they were back then, but the truth now is this other thing, and it's very likely. I'm pretty convinced that that's how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I wrote down before you said the word stepping stones, I wrote down those words. Oh. Like I wouldn't be able to get to my thinking without having their thinking before. Yeah. Like to be able to ponder and contemplate what they were saying. And yeah, I do see, and I already see, I'm 42. When I talk to or commune with those in their some of the younger generations, of course, there's people on the road, they're like, oh my God, those younger people. But sometimes when I'm having this, I'm like, you're so advanced. You're so much further than where I was. I grew up in the Sex and the City era in New York City, where we were, going on and having martinis and going to expensive restaurants. And we, thought that was the way of life of how Carrie Bradshaw lived. Now I look back at that and I'm looking at the younger generation. I'm like, thank God you're not like, I like the hangovers that I had in my 20s. Now at this point in my life, I rarely have alcohol, and don't miss it. There's like none of my self that misses it. From, I think it was 36 to 37. I did a 365-day challenge of no alcohol, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. And just to reset my own relationship with that particular substance. And yeah, to see a younger generation who is moving away. There's a sober trend happening, and the sober trend isn't just from people who've gone to AA. It's from people who are making a lifestyle choice to not drink alcohol and do things differently. And that's something that I'm proud of as being an elder to the 20-something-year-olds. I'm proud to have role modeled and ushering and showing them another way. So curious of, that experience of that space in between me, as being as a healer yourself and doing the work that you've done of ceremony, we're living in this money matrix. And we're all dancing with money, and also, paving our own way with how we even. I hate, I never resonated the whole idea of like valuing yourself, and value yourself, and so charge this because that's your value. Like, we're all making it up at the end of the day, but like, how do you view money in the way, and what did you think and feel within that experience of me not paying, like that space in between? I said I would, give you half now and I'll pay half later. We had nothing. Maybe we had a text message in writing. I think it might have even been a phone call. I don't think anything was writing. There was no paperwork around that. You kind of just put it out there. Maybe you even forgot. I don't know. And then, 8 months later, you get the second half payment from me. And with no communication around it, it just showed up. I think I maybe texted you after, be like, hey, we're going to do that podcast. Did you feel any angst about it? Were you like, when's Christina going to pay me? Do you have a list written down of the people that owe you money? How do you navigate that? Because you want to share your, this medicine with as many people as possible. And you have to survive yourself. You can't just give it away for free. But you also know there's some people who aren't financially able to, maybe don't have the means to give it at that moment. How do you deal with that? And the last thing I want to add is, which I don't believe in, or it just doesn't seem true to me. There is this thing in the spiritual transformational world that people have to pay for something monetarily to take it in as a valuable experience. Like, if you don't pay for it, you won't have it. And I get it. The Kabbalah Center has done, like, they've given their courses for free. They've given them for, sold them for lots and lots of money before. And there's, what they've discovered is the most people, for them to actually continue in the course, have to pay something for the course. But there's also some outliers that I know. I'm so blessed that and I think I might have even shared this with you on the phone, that my experience with ayahuasca during my entrepreneur journey, I never paid. This was one of the first ceremonies I paid for. And that was because
I remember relationship
with the shaman. The friend of mine was with me through my entrepreneur journey. So I think the medicine was coming from God to me. It was like, she's good. Give it. So there was also that experience of like, oh, I should tell this person no, or I should maybe not because they need to pay something. Like, how do you reconcile all?
Yeah. Great question. I love the question. I love the question because there's actually a lot to unpack here. I guess the very first thing I'd like to say is that whatever I'm going to say now is the way I deal with it, and I don't necessarily think is the truth. There's some things that I am a little bit closer to feeling, okay, this is the way or this is the truth. Not that many, but here it's a very, very murky area when we talk about money. A very good friend of mine is I would call it an expert on money. What's the word? Like analyzing the impact of money in people. And I have learned a lot from him. So some of the things that I'll say are directly influenced by his views, but also things that I have noticed throughout my career. I think I first want to address your first question, which is how I felt about you in particular. I would say the way I felt about you is not necessarily, or about any person. That's the best way to put it. The way I feel about each person that is in a similar situation is very different. So it is not dependent on, I couldn't put it as a formula. When someone does this and doesn't talk to me for 6 months and then they pay, I feel this, right? It's not a generic thing. I think it's very individual. It's what I feel on each person, on their intention, on where they were at, on how much they got out of the experience. So with you in particular, what I felt, at first I never doubted you. So I never had any grudges or I never thought of it as, I didn't forget, but I wasn't thinking about it like, oh, this is going to put this is going to hinder our relationship. Or next time I talk to her, I'm going to be like, right? Because this is just who you are and how we've been interacting. So I felt that I knew that it was going to happen. And if I also held the possibility that maybe it won't happen, but if it won't happen, I felt that you are going to reach out and let me know about your situation and that was going to be okay. And when you sent the money, I guess what I felt was some joy of knowing that my intuition about you was right. And it's a reinforcement that people do follow through. And that reinforcement is important because so many didn't in the past. Mm-hmm. And when they didn't, depending on the person, if it was somebody who was really broke and they just can't get their life together, I mainly feel compassion for them. And there are other situations in which the person doesn't pay, and I do feel very angry at them because I feel that it's not about the situation they are in terms of the money. It's more like the situation they are in their mind, right? They are a mess in their mind. They don't follow through. They might be less honest, which I do have also compassion for those parts of them that are wounded that create that effect. But I also don't use that compassion to dismiss the feeling of this person, whether they are conscious of it or not, they purposely, if you will, purposely is a little bit too strong of a word. They did this somewhat on purpose or somewhat knowing. They said that they were going to do it somewhat knowing that they were not, right? That is when it becomes a little bit harder for me emotionally. I tend to always try to arrange with people because, as you said, I do want people to experience this. I don't like that money can be the thing that gets between someone and their experience. I don't like that somebody can have so much money that for them paying for the ceremony means nothing. And for somebody else is so hard to get to, and to make healing so much more accessible for people with money. Yet at the same time, I need money as well. And so it's difficult. It's murky. I tried it all. I tried when COVID hit. I switched my methodology of payment for pay what you can, pay what you feel, pay what it feels right. And that was not sustainable. No, it wasn't sustainable economically, and it was not sustainable emotionally, because I would see that somebody would get so much out of their experience and that they were doing okay, but in their mind, they are still dealing with a survival or lack mentality, which is something that they eventually will need to heal, but that they didn't yet. And so they would give something, let's say they give $200. I'm like, you can pay more, and this experience meant more than that for you. And yet this is what you're giving because this is what you like. This is what you believe where you are at. And when I said at the beginning of the question that there's a lot to unpack, is because money gets attached to the deepest wounds of people. It's a part of our society that goes straight into the parts of ourselves that are the hardest to explore. So surface level wounds are easier to explore, which we tend to release first. And then as you keep doing healing work, whichever methodology you decide to do, you start going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually it might be really hard to keep going because those things are really old and stuck and painful. Those places are where money attaches to. So it is in a way unfair to myself, but also unfair to the participant to tell them, pay what you feel, pay what you want, pay what feels right to you. Because what you're basically telling them without them knowing is go and pay something from a place in which you will probably be deeply wounded without acknowledging that that is what's happening. And what shows up for them is to pay from that place, and something will not feel right for them. There is no right number for most people because most people have not healed their money wounds. So they will do it, or they will believe they are doing it. And a part of them that they will also probably dismiss is going to be feeling guilty or ashamed. A part of them will be saying, I didn't pay the right amount, or I paid less than what I can, or any of those things. But because it's so deeply rooted in intense and profound wounds, they are not going to be able to know that that's what's happening. They're going to feel it and probably immediately dismiss it. So I'm honestly not even doing them a favor by doing that. So it was not sustainable economically either. I couldn't pay my bills with that methodology. And emotionally, it was hard because I would see them struggle. I don't like to receive from that place either. So it's really a mess. I've given many ceremonies for free, sometimes for the whole ceremony, sometimes for people who really need it. And I think the last thing I want to mention is in this thing that you are talking about, that in spiritual communities, giving things for free is experienced as people not really getting much out of it. And I would say in my experience, that is true. I've given free ceremonies to hundreds of people, and I can probably say statistically 1 out of 20, so 5% of the people who I've given free ceremonies got as much as the people paying. 19 out of 20 were always the people who didn't get anything out of it, who were the most difficult, who I regretted having in ceremony. Yes, if you're listening to this, I will not pretend that I am happy with all the participants. Sometimes somebody comes and I am like, I wish you wouldn't have come to the ceremony, and I will not invite you back. And it wasn't something that I would think about, oh, that person didn't pay, let me see if I like him or not, right? Like, I would treat them and experience them like any other person. And at the end of the ceremony, when I would debrief with my guardians or with myself, I'd be like, oh, this person, man, like, I can't. I was like, oh, that's the one that didn't pay. And then that happened enough times that I'm like, what's going on? Like, people who don't pay, I would say 95% of them get less out of the ceremony, and they are harder to deal with. So that's just statistics in my observation.
I want to speak to the feeling of what it is like to be the 1 out of 20 people. Because
yes, you are one of them. I'm not saying that because we're alive. You are one of them.
So it's anybody who's listening who are potentially that you may think that you're 19 out of the 20 people, that other percentage. Fucking stop, knock it off. The reason, because it adds more stress to my life, because I feel the pressure from those who are the other part. Because if I'm just this, 1 out of 20, this small group that is having this other experience, we tend to sort of get cast aside, and then we don't get those experiences, are harder for us to receive. And I get it, because, what you're speaking to, I definitely live my life I don't think most people would not have done what I've done. And when I say not have done what I've done in the experience of building We Deepen and doing the work that I've done and taking the level of risk, financially, emotionally at times, because I think there's a lot of emotions attached to the finances. I've been on quite a journey, an emotional journey I was one of those people in my, teens, 20s, that I have never experienced, like, I didn't experience depression. Like, I was acknowledging that I didn't have, in my it's not that I had a perfect childhood. My parents, struggled in my teens. There's turbulence in my family. I know I don't want to compare traumas, but it was like just the right trauma to create me of who I am. And there was times where I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get by, and the universe would always show up in some strange ways. But I was in a basement of a library in New York City, crying to this elderly man, a financial planner, being like, I have all this debt, and should I cash out my 401k? And I'm not quite sure what to do, but I have these like visions of what I'm supposed to build and create. And it was so confusing, because who do you even talk to about this money? Because you don't want to go to your parents, because you don't want to stress them out. But I noticed what I've seen now, because one of the greatest things about aging, and maybe I'm a pro-ager. I don't like a lot of it. There's the anti-aging world. Like, I'm like pro-aging, because I get so much wisdom with age and with the story as it's unfolding. But I didn't really feel that level of depression and angst until the money thing showed up, until I quit corporate America, until I left a 6-figure salary job without fully knowing. I had an idea of, but I didn't wait for this pristine moment that I was like, I've worked out how all this is going to happen. I've mapped it out, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is that, and the company's going to build, and I'm going to be all great. And then even if I did, God laughs at your plan anyway, and it all gets distorted and messiness. And why I think it was important for me to ask that question too is that as I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, I'm being positioned in some way, and I'm saying, and it's on my Instagram profile, it says, in the profile right now, the word matchmaker there is there. And when people are joining the Love Club, it's currently framed as a 6-month intimacy accelerator, including peer-to-peer matchmaking, comprehensive relationship education, and accountability to one's love goals. And when people are coming with these deep longings and desires, we feel also, you say that one of the greatest woundings and so deep is around money. And there's also this deep, great wounding around love. We don't have a collective shared understanding that we've agreed to of how to do love, what love is. And yeah, so that wounding is there too. When I'm working with people in this way, they are coming to me and they're like saying, what oftentimes the question is like, how many matches are you going to get me? I'm like, I'm not trying to go out and get a quota. Like, if you want a number of people, I'll make up a number of people that's like a minimum of 3, or like, if I said 5, like, it's just strange to even say a quota of, so I have to, it's like I'm asking the people that I work with, probably they have to have this like trust in me that I am, because many matchmakers, it's hard to be successful it's hard in the previous iteration of how matchmaking was set up, that you come and you tell me the type of person that you want, that, typically, historically, many matchmakers actually have said over years, I've had many say to me, don't work with women and don't work with narcissists. At the end of the year, when they look back at their business, the people who gave them the hardest time were the women and the narcissist. So they avoid them. I'm not doing that. I would love to work with women who have done the growth work and are really ready. However, I'm not God. I don't have I can't rush the process. And I am in this process of reconciling. I know this is a zone of genius of mine, of making connections and connecting people. And, I have to monetize that, that gift. And I have to have discernment. There's a discernment of like, who am I going to work with on this level? Because I can't take everybody and I can't work with everyone in this way. But there is that space in between where I take your money and then I get to go on this journey. I come back and I, the freedom in it and to then go and do me is so important. And I think as I'm speaking of, it's just this level of noticing those feelings that have been coming up inside of me and being able to communicate them better to the best of my ability to the people that I do take on and work with in this way. And so checking in with you about what did it feel like for that space in between when I said I was going to do something to when I actually did it, and you feeling content in that experience is reassuring to my nervous system for as I go out in the world and continue to do other people. And I'm sure any potential people that I would work with listening to this, I hope that you, I'm giving you almost like sometimes the testimony, the podcasts are like these little levels of like testimonial to me being in this position that I get to sit in, this role I get to play in humanity right now. Because what I'm really excited to do is actually take, I know, Iván, you're in a beautiful, loving relationship and partnership. I imagine we could do a whole other podcast on that story and bring Emily into it. But like what I'm really excited right now is to actually support people like you and in if they haven't found their partner, to bridge that and to help support making that happen, and for you to come into right relations with your significant others, so greater impact can be done in the world through healthy, loving partnership. And second, if you are in relationship, that I love supporting that work as well of a couple that is conscious in their own individual ways, but maybe haven't had access or don't know what's available to them to support their relationship to thrive. So thank you for answering that question. That's super supportive. Gosh,
maybe a question for you is, how did you feel in those however many months? And maybe a follow-up question is, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that at any moment, like let's say 4 months in, you said, by the way, I didn't forget, this is still going to happen. Maybe you did, but I don't think so. Yeah, you didn't. So I know that if I would have been in your position, I'd be like, I still need more time. Because I don't want to be seen as the guy who left you hanging, right? I'm not resentful or anything. I'm more like curious about what you were experiencing and what made you not reach out. So curious about it.
I think one of the reasons I didn't reach out was because I didn't know. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how that it was going to happen, that I was going to be able to, I was in this query of, am I raising another round of funding? Because I raised funding pre-COVID. I'm raising another round of funding for my business. Or am I launching? I've been talking about this idea of a love club. I had thoughts of a love club. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't even know what it was really. I hadn't put it together. I didn't know how I was pricing it. I didn't even I just had, a seed planted of this idea, but I didn't have a plan for it. So me reaching out would be an own acknowledgement of my own pressure. Like I just needed to do the thing to get to the place. And if I had, and even too, is if I even look back at that moment of when I had heard about this ceremony and then jumped on the phone and have a conversation with you, I already was a bit out of my comfort zone I knew that I needed to offer something. Like I think you might have even said that to me. You're like, what can you, or maybe I felt like put it out there of what you're thinking. So I put, I'll just say what I said. I said, $1,000 and let's, I have this network that I highly believe in that is growing, and access to these opportunities. I oftentimes put facilitators on stages. I get, the bigger conferences come to me, have come to me historically. I've known that I'm a projector. My human design is a projector, so I wait to be invited. So I'm not necessarily going out into the world and forcing things to happen, but oftentimes people will come to me and ask me who, or I have this podcast to share as a platform. I know that I'm only in the beginning of my journey, and my deepest excitement is to put other people on stages. I don't have this need to be in the spotlight. The I have a joy of being in the spotlight when I feel that there's like a level of personal growth that I can achieve from that, or a level in my relational life, in my partnership that I can receive from having the spotlight, or, that there's a collective growth that'll happen for me being in the spotlight. But that's not what's driving me to be in it. But I oftentimes will get, the Wonderland conference. I think I've reached out to you about like, hey, Wonderland conference. I think I have that. Like, they're asking for speakers. I can share you there. And so I was confident, I think, that I would deliver. I just didn't know when. So when I made that offer to you of like, I'll give you $1,000, I'll pay half now, I knew that was even like the $500 was like, okay, moving things around. I got it. It's good. I'll figure it out, paid that. But the other half, I wasn't sure. There was the thing, because we never, like, I think it was conversation. I actually didn't even know if you remembered. So I think that because you weren't even putting any pressure on me, you never wrote and said, hey, just want to follow up about, I'd be curious why you didn't do that. You didn't follow up with me. And so I'm like, maybe he doesn't remember. And I just, so it gave me this breathing room. And I think I had a little of pressure, but it was little because I think because I've been through this before. This isn't the first time that a situation like this has happened. Actually, years ago in LA, I had a reading with a human design expert, or maybe it was human design. It might've been some other, maybe it's, I don't know, something that I had with some healer. And I, paid it, I think, a year and a half later. They never followed up, never said anything. I sent the money a year and a half later. So I'd already known that I'd done this before in the past. And I already got to that place of like, the person had never followed up. They never, with like, they never, it's never like a thing, but I just paid it and I moved on. I don't remember who the person is now at this moment, but I remember I always had felt it. And I never acknowledged it. And then they got the money probably a year and a half later. So yeah, that was for me of like, if I would have reached out and said, hey, just following up, I'll send you the money soon, that would have just given me an extra level of pressure, like another energy, another way that I had to spend energy on rather than just doing it.
Got it. Yeah, you answered my question. I was. Why didn't you follow up?
And did you really remember?
I did remember. Yeah, I remembered. I think I already answered it, which is that I trusted you. I trusted that either you were going to send it or you were going to tell me that, hey, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I was going to be okay with either. That what would have disappointed me is if you would have not sent it, or tell me that you were not going to send it, even like if it would just disappear. That would have made me feel that I couldn't read you properly. It would have made me distrust my own intuition.
But what if I, because the space in between, what if it was 4 years later? Like, what if it was, I said this before we jumped on the podcast, that this was a little topic that I wanted to touch,
Yeah.
If you had died, I would have been like, oh my God, I owed that guy money. I feel, oh my God.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't. If it would have been 4 years later, I might have felt that way. So the disappointment until you would have sent it. And if you ask, in which.
I will acknowledge though, if 4 years passed, I don't think I think making this podcast still actually made a stamp into like, there was also, we knew that we were going to record this podcast together. Right. The social interaction was going to that's one thing that I do want to acknowledge. If we had ever stepped in a room together between now and then. And I see how the world is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And we're creating stronger social ties that like, I would have probably walked right up to in a room and be like, hey, like, I want to acknowledge that money, if we had been in a room setting, that would have been the first thing that I would have said to you.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But it's still like a fun game to play of supposing.
It's still a fun game to play supposing. Oh my gosh, Iván, I realized that, I think when we said we're going to record this, I was like, how long are we going to go for? And like,
how long has it been?
I think at least like an hour and 20 minutes or so. That was
okay.
Thank you. If you're listening right now and you've been listening this whole time, thank you. I hope you found value in this conversation. It's an interesting thought experiment. And as we started to unpack this conversation, it's like neither Iván and I own the truth or the way to do this and the right way to do this, but it's, I think of talking about it is what gets us closer to there. And there's other people that I imagine have been pondering this thought experience. And for me, being the one of 20, I guess to say, it's another level of just unpacking for me to do, because I'm the other in this experience. I'm the minority in this experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And every time that somebody did that, was part of that minority, as I said, it reinforces the idea that it can be done. And so today, discounts and free ceremonies are given with a lot more awareness on how to make it happen so that I don't put myself or the participant through that situation.
Yeah.
And all of those experiences have taught me how to get closer to that. But I think the thing that I want to maybe close this with is, at the end of the day, is never going to be 100% clean water. And I already mentioned why, and it's because those ones that are the hardest to reach are where money attaches. And so there's always going to be some level of wounding from both ends. I include myself in there as a person receiving it, as a facilitator, as a person who has done 500 ayahuasca ceremonies. I am wounded around money as well. I have worked around a lot of the wounds that I came to my I wouldn't say came to the world with, but came to my adulthood with, from being born in Argentina and raised there, where there's so much poverty and so much lack mentality. I healed a lot, and I have so much more to heal around it. And so it's never going to be clean. At least I don't think that that's where society as a whole are. I think there might be a few individuals, but very, very, very few whose relationship with money is very, very clean and healed. For the rest of us, we're going to be playing within murky waters.
Can I give I want to share my, a theory that I have around why this exists. And
go ahead.
Hear your response to the theory. I think it all boils down to love.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this podcast before, you might have heard me say this. I do parade around this theory often. I see love as a gradual process of removing layers of the ego, fears, negativity, the things that are holding you back from being your most authentic, the highest version of yourself, coupled with ever increasing acts of sharing. We give to who we love. And when there's so much confusion around love and healthy love and the sense of not enough, or these lower vibrational feelings, if any, it's in Kabbalah, there's a story around I'm going to give you the gist of the story, but it's like God instills Moses, who runs a community of, thousands of people, to really practice the game of love, and believes that they can all do it. And it's essentially, they're all going to and they're all going to support each other. So that without necessarily the money system itself, it's almost that it's sort of like the Burning Man culture to some extent, like this giving mentality, because you love each other. So the person who builds houses is going to build houses for the community, and the person who loves to cook is going to cook, and the person who loves to do massages, and the person who loves to coach, and like they're all going to participate in the use their energetics to participate in creating, not to sound so la-di-da, but like the world we wish to see. But when just one person out of those thousands restricts or pulls back, it's felt by the entire collective, and the whole thing falls apart. Mm-hmm. So in order to really play this, we all have to participate in this process of like, I'm going to continue to remove my fears, the negativities, the judgments, the unhealthy ego that is holding me back from being my most authentic, highest version of myself. And then again, like, and then giving to each other. And also too, in that process of revealing yourself, of taking off the mask, is like one of the greatest gifts you can give another human being. But we all, it's circusry. We have to be willing to play the game for it to work. Again, it's like if you're in a relationship and one person pulls back, the other person can't make up for it. It's like you both have to be willing to participate. So as a collective, we all have to be willing to play the healthy game of love together, the spiritual game of love together. And right now, we're still figuring out the rules. Like we're redefining them. We're putting them in place. We're teaching each other. We're learning. And so it's messy. And yeah, oftentimes, like I've heard in the financial situations, the amount of times that I have talking to people and heard these stories of people getting into marriages and partnerships and saying, the one thing is, don't touch, like, my money is my money and your money is your money. Like, or I was married once before, my next relationship, we don't share money. Like, and that we're restricting, we're pulling back, not doing that again.
Yes.
Going to these hoarding. It's like the hoarding, it's the not enough. Yeah.
Yes. You're right. It attaches to the woundings based on lack of community. It attaches to the woundings based on lack of love, on lack of safety. We're talking about all the most basic human needs, being loved, being wanted, being safe, and being in community. And in all of those, on the deepest wounds around those areas is where money brings a safe haven. It's not really safe, right? But that's the feeling. It's like, I can replace, you can't, but the feeling is, I don't have love, but I have money. I don't have safety, but I have money. I don't have community, but I have money. So it's a way, it's the thing that we use to replace a basic human need that we might have not gotten and wounded us so deeply. And money offers that as a contract where money says, I'm offering you to soothe this part of you, not to heal it or to address it, but to soothe it. and you're going to praise me. You're going to give me the priority in your life. And so in the example that you just gave, the husband saying, or the wife, it doesn't matter, saying, my next marriage, money is separate. You are in that moment, whatever has caused a wound around safety or love, you're going to use money as a form of saying, in this specific area, I'm going to be safe, or I'm going to feel safe, because at the end is not the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a summarized way of saying it, because I know we are a little bit over time. So,
wow. Yeah. Gosh, leaving you with a lot to think about. Thank you, Iván. What, to make sure that we end on a really positive high note.
Sure.
what's something coming through for you to support that intention?
Which intention?
To leave on a high note, to end this, wrap this podcast.
Yeah. That's nice. You caught me a little by surprise, so I might just need a few more seconds. What is it that's coming through? I can feel something in there, and I can also feel the pressure that everything is being recorded, including the silence.
I think it's good to be in silence for a moment. I think it's great to actually even role model. It's okay to be in silence for a moment.
Why don't we end it like that? So when you're done listening to this podcast, to tell you that it is okay to be in silence. See what happens when you think and feel that, both the feminine and the masculine, and you are with it.
I love
see what happens.
You know, America specifically, I don't know the rest of the world, I live in America, is that we're trying to solve every problem in every moment and to just live in the paradoxes. Yeah, to be okay with the paradoxes and to be in the unknown, not fully knowing, and the space between.
Yeah, I think it has been a theme of our conversation. So I feel that's a really positive way to end it.
So in this description of this podcast, the show notes, I'm going to share where to find you. YouTube, Instagram, where else?
Website, all the other socials. I would give priority to the YouTube. That's my little baby now, my project, where I use it as a platform to teach. The other ones I use as well. I'm putting in the most energy on YouTube. You can go to my website to learn more about me. And yeah.
And what will we get from going to the YouTube?
You will get the videos that I am putting out weekly. So every Friday, I release a video with a lesson on something. There's a few that are already there. Some of them are about plant medicine directly. I talk about ayahuasca and what it does and all those things, because I believe that the information out there is not good, mostly. But some others are not about that. I released one last week about why people live unfulfilled and what causes it and what to do about it. And there's going to be one about free will. What is it? Where do we lose it? How do we recover it? There's one about shame. Why is it the most harmful emotion that we can experience and how it shows up, how to release it? There's one about fear, right? So if you've been listening to this conversation, you probably got to know me a little bit and about how my mind and my heart works. So it is me applied to those topics that I believe is going to bring healing into those who listen to it.
Thank you, Iván. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Christina.
So grateful.
Thank you for the platform, for the space, and the possibility. Thank you for giving me and amplifying my voice out into the world. It means a lot.
You're welcome. It seems important. It feels important. It feels important to do that. Thank you for listening. And if you found value in this conversation, share it with a friend. Let's spread the wisdom. Let's spread the conversations. Also, while I love speaking with you in this way, what I enjoy even more is being in community with you and being together. So go to that calendar at wedeepen.com. Check out all the upcoming social and transformational experiences. Check out the Love Club. Again, in 2024, I will be figuring out rolling registration. So there'll be other opportunities for you to join in and participate. Also, We Deepen, we have a bunch of WhatsApp groups, particularly in the Miami, LA, Austin, New York, a little, like we're still tapping those markets, areas. Feel free to tap in and join us there. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate, give it 5 stars. And that's another way that helps more people find it and helps me to continue to host it and helps We Deepen grow and the Love Club grow. Grateful for you all. Happy New Year and happy life. Enjoy. Bye.